Okay. I think we'll probably start Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 15. Get a running start on it here. It's our word of prayer. Father, we are very grateful for your word, because your word tells us things that are going to happen ahead of time, so we can stand in awe of your ability, of your wisdom, of your intelligence. We ask that your Spirit would guide us in the study of your word. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I'm going to start in chapter 37, verse 15. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take a stick of wood and write on it, belonging to Judah and the Israelites associated with him. Then take another stick of wood and write on it, belonging to Joseph, that is, to Ephraim, and all the Israelites associated with him. That's the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. Join them together into one stick, so that they will become one in your hand. When your people ask you, won't you tell us what you mean by this? Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am going to take the stick of Joseph, which is the Ephraim's hand, which is in Ephraim's hand, and of the Israelite tribes associated with him, that's the 10 northern tribes, and join it to Judah's stick. I will make them into a single stick of wood, and they will become one in my hand. Hold before their eyes the sticks you have written on, and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will take the Israelites out of the nations where they have gone. I will gather them from all around and bring them back to their own land. I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel. There will be one king over all of them, and they will never again be two nations or be divided into two kingdoms. They will no longer defile themselves with their idols and vile images, or with any of their offenses, for I will save them from all their sinful backsliding, and I will cleanse them. They will be my people, and I will be their God. Okay, obviously, this is a portion describing the unifying again of the northern and southern kingdom into one kingdom of the Lord that he will reign over. And we have some interesting aspects which will be added to in the few chapters coming up. Beginning of verse 24, my servant David will be king over them, and they will all have one shepherd. David was the civil authority over the nation of Israel, and he's the standard by which all of the kings of Israel and Judah were judged. You'll see it, written throughout the book of Kings. He did thus and such, and was a good king like David. Or he didn't measure up to David, because David was the standard. He was the best of the civil authority, and God is going to raise David up. Now, this resurrection will happen at the beginning of the millennium, when all the Jewish believers will have their resurrection, as well as Old Testament believers will have their resurrection, and he will reign in Jerusalem and be the civil authority again, just as we will be in our resurrection body. And God will say to Ora, you've been faithful in a little bit, I'll make you a dog collector in Havensville. or dog catcher or whatever, And but each of us will have civil authorities in the millennial kingdom, and there can be no corruption of the government because we can't be corrupted. We don't have a sin nature. What are you going to bribe us with? It's just that's what we don't have. We have everything, and there's no temptation to sin in our new bodies. And David is going to have his resurrection body, and he's going to reign as a civil authority over Israel, the united Israel. That'll be quite a time. And we're in territory, by the way, that people that just, they don't want to basically believe in a millennial reign of Christ. They don't have any idea what to do with these passages. They're just lost about these passages. Just throw their hands up, say, well, it's symbolic. Of course, everything for them is symbolic because they won't take anything literally. But this is exactly what it says. He doesn't talk about symbolism. He talks about the fact that David is going to reign as a civil authority in Israel again, and it will be perfect government. They will follow my laws and be careful to keep my decrees. By the way, now why would they follow the Old Testament laws? The Old Testament laws work no matter if you use them now or use them in the Old Testament times or use them in the millennium. There are three portions to the Old Testament. There is the commandment code. You shall not steal. You shall not murder. You shall not bear false witness. There are lots of those commands given, and that'll work for any nation. Any nation in the world who decides to take those laws as the standard for their laws will have a good nation and a blessed nation because those are God's standards. There are other codes, such as the spiritual code. Once you see you don't even measure up to the civil code and you realize you're a sinner, you need a spiritual code. And those are the sacrifices that were given in the Old Testament. Those were never required for the believers who were Gentiles. They're never required to follow those. If they lived in the land of Israel, they had to follow them. But if they lived in other countries, as many, many did, they weren't required to follow those commands, nor were they required to follow the third aspect of the Old Testament law, which was the civil code, which I shouldn't say civil code, it's a social code, which, excuse me, I'm going to think about this for a second, which told the Israelites how to dress, how to practice hygiene, and that made them very unique among the other nations. What kind of things to eat and not to eat. Those are their social codes. It made them a unique people. And so those are the three aspects of the Old Testament. There's the commandments, the civil code, the social code, and the commands, the spiritual code, and the social civil code. And that summarizes all the Old Testament. When there's 613 commands in the Old Testament, those involve all three of those different aspects. Okay, but God did not give those to the Gentiles. He gave those to the Jews. The Jews will still be required to follow the Sabbath day rest and the Sabbatical laws and the Jubilee law. They will still be required to follow the perfect codes that they were given because they're Israelites. And that always told the other nations that they were unique. And when asked about their uniqueness. It was their opportunity to talk to the Gentiles about the living God and what he had given them. All right, excuse me, go ahead.
There's a really cool detail. It's where God's giving the descriptions of the sacrifices, and he's kind of very specific on how they're supposed to prepare them and present them. And one of the details is they're sprinkled with salt. And salt it's sensible to sprinkle with salt because it slows decay and it preserves the sacrifices. But you kind of think of that spiritually, how God is using that as an image of how he's going to preserve us. He's going to keep us from rotting. He's going to keep us from decay. And he's going to renew us. He's kind of like, and even Jesus said, you guys are the salt of the earth. Mm-hmm. You know, because salt is actually used as a means of payment back then because it was so valuable. Yeah. But it, like I said, it slows decay of the meat. It could be used as flavoring for flavorless foods and stuff like that. And how valuable it is. I just thought it's kind of interesting because it felt like almost every like description of the sacrifices you had to sprinkle with salt. Yeah. Why is that? It's weird. Yeah. But if you look back at the law and you try to see Christ in the law, there's so many interesting little things that stick out to you that point towards Christ. Right. Even in it's kind of boring on the surface level, but when you dig deeper into it, it builds a bigger picture of Christ and who he is and what he does. Yeah. And the scripture tells, have salt in yourself. Yeah. You know, we should be the preservative and the flavoring of the world because we have the words of life. Okay, verse 25. They will live in the land I gave to my servant Jacob, the land where your ancestors lived. They and their children and their children's children will live there forever. And David, my servant, will be their prince forever. Until the universe is dissolved away, this is going to be true. David is going to reign in that millennium. And then there'll be an eternal order, and when God will make something completely new. I will make a covenant of peace with them. It will be an everlasting covenant. I will establish them and increase their numbers, and I will put my sanctuary among them forever. My dwelling place will be with them. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Then the nations will know. I want you to understand as we're going through this, then the nations will know. It keeps on being repeated in the next couple chapters over and over and over. These things are going to happen as a witness to the nations that God is the God of Israel. He's the God of all people. But for them to understand that this God that gave them the word, that gave them the sacrifices, that gave them all of the meaningful ritual and whatnot, is the God who wanted to relate to his people and share with his people deep truths from his word. They will know that the Lord, then the nations will know that the Lord that I, the Lord, make Israel holy when my sanctuary is among them forever. And there'll be no question. No one is going to say, as Isaiah talks about this, no one's going to say, know the Lord. Because in the millennium, everybody will know him. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's a believer, but everybody knows who the God of the universe is. It's Jesus Christ. And it will be a universal knowledge among all people without exception. So there won't be any religion for 1,000 years. There will not be any buildings, religious buildings, you know, a Methodist building or a Baptist building or a Jehovah's Witness building, there'll be no religious buildings in the millennium except the temple. And yet there's going to be universal knowledge of God. Chapter 38.
We do not know the time frame of this. I tend to believe it's going to be at the very end, very beginning of the tribulation, because of a few things we'll talk about here. The word of, I hope I get to see a little bit of it before I take off. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog and of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Meshech and Tubal are the areas, the landmass. Gog and Magog are eastern Russia, western Russia and eastern Russia. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen, fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. When you go fishing and you catch a fish with a hook, that hook caught in their mouth or somewhere in their mouth or area pulls them toward you. And that's the idea. It's an irresistible pull to the land of Israel that Russia is going to have. And Russia is planning on pillaging and taking a lot of plunder, but actually, Russia is going to their destruction. And they have some confederates, Persia.
I have a question about Gog and Magog.
Yeah.
In Revelation chapter 12, it talks about the woman giving birth to a son. And is the woman the nation of Israel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the son is Jesus,
Mhm.
and the dragon is Satan.
Yeah.
And it says in verse 15 that the serpent or the dragon cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, and swallowed up the flood. Which I read too far. And then that he might cause her to be carried away from the flood. And then it says the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Is that Gog and Magog being swallowed up by the earth?
That's what's going to happen. Yeah. And God is going to provide supernatural deliverance for the Israelites. That's what this chapter is about, the next chapter, the supernatural deliverance. And a flood is always symbolic of an army overwhelming a land. And this army is going to overwhelm the land, but it's going to be supernaturally delivered with an earthquake. Swallowed up. Yeah. So there's Persia. And so it's interesting because, I talk to people and they say that it's fascinating what's happening, but they know that Persia is going to eventually attack Israel. And I said, that's correct. Because it says it right here in this chapter, Persia is aligned with Russia. So even if we get the right people in Iran who align themselves with the United States, or at least at peace with the United States, it's going to turn. And they're going to align themselves with Russia and take their army down to destroy. Because there's no question there's going to be a little bitterness among some of the Iranians, because Israel is firing thousands of missiles and destroying almost all the leadership of Iran. And so they're going to come with Russia and attack Israel. And they will end up with the same fate as Russia. So Persia, Cush. Now, the Cushites are described as a smooth-skinned, tall people. And those are what we would call Ethiopians, those south of Egypt. dark-skinned, tall Cushites. And Cushites were aligned with Egypt and then away from Egypt, depending on what time of history it was. And Put is Libya. If you go look on a map, it's not here. Here's Egypt, and over here is Libya. And they're going to align themselves with the Russian Confederation. Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. Also, Gomer. Now, Gomer, with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah from the far north. There's an area of Gomer. Sometimes Gomer is referred to as Germany, but this Gomer is north, and it's in the Turkey area. And the Beth Garmath, that would be Armenia, which is in southern Turkey. And there was a great, after World War I, or during that conflict and all, Turkey did its best to genocide the Armenians. The Armenians were traditionally Christian. I say, and you never know what that may mean. It may mean they're just nominal Christians, because each generation has to believe. You can't run on your grandparents' faith. But the Armenian area is what it's talking about. And basically, we have the southern part, which to us would be Turkey. Turkey is going to align itself, and Turkey has always been a on-again, off-again ally of NATO. You never know what they're going to do because they have their own agenda, but they will align themselves with Russia. Verse 7, get ready, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. After many days, you will be called to arms. In future years, you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people are gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which has long been desolate. And that is since 1946, basically, that Israel has been gathered from many nations and has been reassembling in Israel, but not all of them. The majority are still in other lands. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. And this is going to be, there's one thing that this war that is going on right now with Iran is going to do. It's going to put Israel in a position where they feel safe, because they only have one international enemy to speak of, and that is Iran. And with Iran gone as a power against them, they're going to feel safe. And this is why you have two nations fighting Iran, the United States of America and Israel. And it's for Israel's safety. It's for Israel's future that they're fighting. They have gone into the Lebanon area, and they are eliminating also those forces that were there trying to destroy the Israelites. And they're very, Hezbollah. They're the ones that are there. And they're very hesitant to fight Israel right now because they know how iffy their situation is. Because in the last warfare, Israel just turned on the, what do we call those things? Pagers, thank you. turned the pages on and they all blew up in their pockets. And it took out the vast majority of their leadership. And so they're scared to do anything. And that's why, although they have tens of thousands of rockets, they're not shooting them because they're a little afraid of what might happen to them. They don't know what else Israel has up its sleeve.
I think everything south of Mighty River, they told me that. They started bombing right in the middle of their really good die. Look that up. Center of Hezbollah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they're serious about it. Yeah. They're not like the United States has been for so many years. We've had our foreign policy could be described as namby-pamby. It's, you got these people that want to destroy others. You got these terrorists that have run amok for almost 50 years now. And we say, now you guys behave. You guys behave, And we finally have a president who says no more. And I don't care what you think of Trump. He's the best thing to ever happen to this nation. It's just amazing. Would that we had presidents. Every president had the backbone that he has, and they're determined they're going to eliminate that threat from their people. Why wouldn't you? If Nebraska were determined to kill every one of you and your children and your children's children, would you be a little more serious about it? Hopefully you would be. That's where Israel's at now, and they're determined to get rid of this. And so when they do, and they will, it's going to be like they're dwelling in safety, and they're going to feel safe. They're right in the middle of their safety. Comes the Russians. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. There's definitely some angelic conflict there too.
Yes.
Because from Daniel, Prince of Persia opposed Michael.
Right.
Michael's the guardian angel.
Yeah.
So
There's definitely.
I think Palestine literally means Philistine.
Yeah. Philistine land. Yeah.
That's an ancient enemy. Way back.
Yeah.
So it's really changed.
Yeah.
It's definitely
Well,
same enemy.
Yeah. Nothing really changes.
Yeah. I mean, it's all-
Yeah. Yeah. And the enemies of Israel are going to be the enemies of Israel because of the enemies of God. It's a spiritual conflict. If you put another mullah in leadership in Iran, you're going to have the same thing. You have people trying to kill all the Israelites and kill the United States because their fight is a spiritual fight and they understand it. They believe that if they can nuke the world if necessary, and they're willing to do it, and they're willing to do it because of their religion. If they can nuke the world, Muhammad or the next caliphate would come into being and rule the world, and Muhammad will rule the world. And that's what they believe. So it's not like it has to do with land or has to do with an economy or something like that. It has to do with a religion. And their religion is a religion of hate. So when they say kill Israel and kill the United States, they mean it. They're not two-faced about it at all. They mean exactly what they say. And they would love to see the United States be wiped off the face of the earth. And that you would see people with guns that go in and start shooting up American citizens, and they have belonging to Allah and an Iranian flag underneath that. Yeah, they mean it. So it is a spiritual issue. It's not an economic issue. It's a spiritual issue. That's why you'll never change the Muslims in Deerfield and other Muslim enclaves. You'll not change them because it's a spiritual issue. It's not an economic issue. In the future years, you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. You know anything about the nation of Israel, before the Jews started settling Israel, it was a desolate country. It's full of swamps. It was full of a desert area. And they came in and drained the swamps and started irrigating the desert areas and made the nation bloom. And the other nations and peoples had it for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, did nothing with it. And then the Jews came along and started making it bloom. And that's exactly what it says right here. It had long been desolate, and they started making something out of it. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. You and all your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. This is what the sovereign Lord says on that day. Thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil scheme. You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. All right, that alone right there tells you it's a modern setting that we live in now. Everybody lives in unwalled villages. Nobody has walls around Kansas City, Missouri, or Topeka, because when they invented gunpowder, you could stand afar off and blast the walls down. So it was senseless to have walls anymore. You had to go outside the walls and fight. And that's the way it is all over the world now. We live in unwalled villages. That's unheard of, by the way, in Ezekiel's day. That was totally unheard of. No one could even comprehend why unwalled villages, you know.
There's a funny proverb. A man who doesn't have self-control is like a city without walls. So
Yeah.
that lack of self-control, you're so vulnerable to outside forces, and that was the picture in that proverb.
Yep.
I think it's kind of that fun play on me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's good. I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people. Now, I don't know if the peace treaty has been signed yet. I doubt it. But I think the peace treaty will be signed right after these things occur. Peace treaty will be signed with the Antichrist for peace for 7 years. All of them living without walls and without gates and bars. I will plunder and loot and turn my hand against the resettled ruins and the people gathered from the nations, rich in livestock and goods, living, notice this phrase, living at the center of the land. Center of the earth, basically, is what it's saying here. And it used to be only recently they started making maps that were different than this, but they always made maps. For hundreds of years, they made maps until very recently. And the center of the map was Jerusalem. Okay? And everything went from there because it was the center of the earth. Whatever happened at Jerusalem and with the Israelites was the key to what's going to happen with the world. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish and all their villages will say to you, have you come to plunder? These are the great seafaring peoples and the peoples who did all the trade in the ancient world. Have you gathered your hoards to loot, to carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, and to seize much plunder? Therefore, Son of Man, prophesy and say to Gog, this is what the sovereign Lord says. In that day, when my people Israel are living in safety, will you not take notice of it? You will come from your place in the far north. Take a marker and go from Jerusalem and go straight north, and you'll get to Moscow. In the far north. And the many nations with you, all of them riding on horses, a great horde, a mighty army. And I think about this sometimes, it's just speculation on my part, I mean, everybody speculates, so I guess I could join the club. Some of the drones and the defense against drones are electronic, where they will jam them so that they will fall out of the sky. If you learn to jam enough mechanized vehicles, you'll be back to horses. And that's exactly what could happen. You will advance against my people Israel like a cloud that covers the land. In days to come, Gog, I will bring you against my land so that, purpose clause, so that the nations may know me when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. What God is doing here is he's giving a message to the nations. God is the Holy One and the only one, the only God. And it's going to be clear to every nation, to all the Muslim nations, to all the Hindu nations, to all the Buddhist nations, to all the nations, there's only one God. And he's taking care of his people, Israel. And this could very well be the precursor to the evangelism the Jews are going to do during the tribulation. He sets it up that God has supernaturally preserved his people, and people are a little bit gun shy about going against them because God fights for them.
I think in Revelation it says the two witnesses are actually killed in the streets, and they lie there dead, and they're not given tombs. They lie there for like 3 days, and then they're risen and they're brought up to heaven. People are terrified because, and that's another element of evangelism that God uses during that crisis, which is interesting.
Now, to not be buried was the greatest shame of all in the ancient world. I mean, if you had 1,000 descendants, all kinds of gold and silver, but you didn't have a decent burial, it was considered a worthless life. And so they don't let these two be buried for 3 days. They're unburied. Then God says, come on up here. And they stand on their feet, alive again, while all the TV cameras on CNN and everywhere else are watching them, and the whole world is witnessing their resurrection, and they ascend to heaven. And a great earthquake and all the kinds of things that break loose. I don't think that doesn't shake up a lot of people. And what is God doing? He's evangelizing. He used those two witnesses to evangelize the Israelites, and then he uses them to evangelize the world, that they might know there is one true and living God and might turn to him. All right. Will you take notice of it? Will you come from your place in the far north? Will you, and many nations with you, all of them riding horses, a great horde, a mighty army? I think that Ukraine will be among them. Ukraine will be at that point then fighting with, not that they want to, but they'll be forced to, fighting with Russia. You will advance against my people Israel like a cloud that covers the land. In days to come, Gog, I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me, so that the nations may know me when I am proved holy through you before their eyes. This is what the sovereign Lord says. You are the one I spoke of in former days by my servants, the prophets of Israel. At that time, they prophesied for years that I would bring you against them. This is what will happen in that day. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my hot anger will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. In my zeal and fiery wrath, I declare that at that time there will be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. The mountains will be overturned, the cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will summon a sword against Gog on all my mountains, declares the sovereign Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. Okay, this is part of what happened. We have this confederation of armies. You have the Ukrainians fighting with the Russians, and the Ukrainians don't forget what happened to their nation. You have the Iranians, and they won't forget that Russia did nothing during the war we're seeing right now. They're doing nothing to help the Iranians. Neither did Turkey. And so these nations start fighting against each other and turning on each other. And this has been a motif throughout the scripture. You'll see of nations that fought against each other, that were allied to each other, but ended up fighting each other and destroying each other. And that's what's going to happen. Part of what's going to happen. This great earthquake is going to set them into a panic, and they're going to start hammering away at each other, destroying each other, as well as being swallowed up, literally swallowed up by an earthquake. The mountains will be overturned, cliffs crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will summon a sword against Gog on all my mountains, declares the sovereign Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. I will execute judgment on him with plague and bloodshed. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on him and on his troops and on the many nations with him. And so I will show my greatness and my holiness. The righteousness and the justice of God, you add those two together, shows the holiness of God. And I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. We have to understand, this word, the Lord, is the word that all the nations of the world understood was the God of Israel. And everyone's going to say, this is the God of Israel fighting for them. No other God did this. Buddha didn't do this. Muhammad didn't do this. Krishna didn't do this. And all the other made-up gods didn't do this. But the Lord did. And it's going to shake everyone to their core. All right. Chapter 39. We got good time. Okay. Son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. That huge landmass, which is the biggest landmass, which is called, used to be called Soviet Union, but it's a large landmass of Russia. I will turn you around and drag you along. I will bring you from the far north and send you against the mountains of Israel. It is God's will that the armies of Russia all are forced down to the mountains of Israel, where they are to be destroyed. Then I will strike your bow from your left hand and make your arrows drop from your right hand. On the mountains of Israel you will fall, you and all your troops, and the nations with you. I will give you as food to all kinds of carrion birds and to the wild animals. You will fall in the open field, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. I will send fire on Magog. Now, that's Russia. And it's hard to comprehend this, but we have comprehended this. When they had all these fires down in southern Kansas and Oklahoma and whatnot, and it just devastated counties. Whole counties were burned up. Well, fire is going to devastate the Russian lands, and they're going to burn. And we see more of this happening in the tribulation. It talks about a third of the grass being burned up and all. I will send fire on Magog and on those who live in safety in the coastlands, and they will know that I am the Lord. All of this is to teach people there is one God, and he judges. I will make known my holy name among my people Israel. I will no longer let my holy name be profaned, and the nations will know that I, the Lord, am the Holy One in Israel. It is coming. It will surely take place, declares the sovereign Lord. This is the day I have spoken of. Exodus chapter 20. And we've seen it in Ezekiel 36. Then those who live in the towns of Israel will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up, the small and large shields, the bows and arrows, the war clubs and spears. For 7 years, this is interesting now, 7 years, they'll be able to use what they collect in wood, such as your Russian rifles and machine guns. They all are made of wood. The stock is made of wood. All the carts and whatnot they have, and tremendous amount of wood. There's going to be so much made of wood that for 7 years, Israelites will be able to collect that wood and use it for firewood for themselves.
Sorry.
That's right.
Before I forget, it says that the Antichrist is going to issue a mark of the beast that you cannot buy or sell unless you have that mark. And there is a remnant that God has kept for himself of Israel that will not give themselves over to that mark.
Right.
So they can't buy, they can't sell. How they're supposed to survive, this is probably how they're going to survive.
Part of it right there. Yeah.
So, I would wonder, grow a bunch of gardens and stuff and live off potatoes.
I'm sure they'll do that, and God is going to provide for them. And you know what's going to happen is we're going to say, when it happens, we'll say, oh yeah, of course. Sure, yeah, that makes sense. Because that's just the way God is. He uses natural and supernatural means. And when we see it, we say, of course, God can do that, no problem. For 7 months, the Israelites will be buried. No, where am I? I'm on 7 years, verse 9. Thank you. Then those who live in the towns of Israel go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up, the small and large shields, the bows, arrows, the war clubs, the spears. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. Okay. They will not need to gather wood from the fields or cut it from the forests, because they will use the weapons for fuel. And they will plunder those who plundered them and loot those who looted them, declares the sovereign Lord. So, and it's interesting, we have a 7-year period. Well, the tribulation's 7 years. Could it be that at the beginning, when the tribulation is about to come, this great, and if so, we may be still around to see it happen as church age believers. Russia coming down to invade Israel. And if we do see it, our prayer life will increase greatly. Because we know our time is near, that we're going to be taken off soon. On that day, I will give Gog a burial place in Israel, in the valley of those who travel east of the sea. There's two seas. There's the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. And there's going to be this burial place between. I will block the way of travelers, because Gog and all his hordes will be buried there. There's going to be a huge graveyard of the hordes of Gog. So it will be called the Valley of Hamon Gog, or the Valley of the Hordes of Gog. For 7 months, the Israelites will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. So we know that for 7 months, there's going to be a universal job burying the dead. There can be so many dead from this earthquake, by the millions and millions and millions of dead soldiers, that it's going to take a long time to gather all their body and body parts and get them buried. In fact, 7 months. So 7 months they go through the land and pretty well cleanse it. They bury him. And then they go through and meticulously go shoulder to shoulder and pick up any body part, like a finger or whatever, and make sure they're buried also. And that's what it says coming up here.
Yeah, look at Russia. They infamously have strength in numbers in their military.
Yep.
Like, you look at the Battle of Stalingrad alone, the amount of losses on the Russian side,
Oh, yeah.
and even Stalin killing as many as he did. Lots of Russians died.
20 million of his own people in peacetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's almost half the deaths alone.
Yeah,
of that
right.
war.
And in Stalingrad, life expectancy was 2 days.
Yeah.
I mean, they just kept pouring men in, and the Germans, they fought well and held them out, but it's just overwhelming numbers. Until they overwhelmed them. And that's what they're going to do again. And there's going to be another great horde of people from China, 200 million strong in their army, who are going to march against Jerusalem. And that will be the last battle. For 7 months, the Israelites will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. All the people of the land will bury them. This is a universal. I can't think of the word for it, but it's a works program, a government works program where we're all going to get these people buried and get the land cleaned up. In that day, I will display my glory. And the day I display my glory will be a memorial day for them, declares the sovereign Lord. People will be continuously employed in cleansing the land. They will spread out across the land, and along with others, they will bury any bodies that are lying on the ground. After 7 months, they will carry out a more detailed search as they go through the land. Anyone who sees a human bone will leave a marker beside it until the grave diggers bury it in the valley of Hamon Gog, near a town called Hamon Ah. So they will cleanse the land. And this is the graveyard of the hordes of Gog, is what it means. A gigantic graveyard. Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Call out to every kind of bird, and all the wild animals assemble and come together from all around to the sacrifice I am preparing for you, the great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel. There you will eat flesh and drink blood. You will eat the flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, as if they were rams and lambs, goats and bulls, all of them fattened animals from Bashan. Bashan is where you sent your animals to fatten them up before the slaughter. They had great pasture land, and they had the fattest of cattle there. At the sacrifice I am preparing for you, you will eat fat till you are glutted and drink blood till you are drunk. At my table, you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers of every kind, declares the sovereign Lord. I will display my glory among the nations, and all the nations will see the punishment I inflict and the hand I lay on them. From that day forward, the people of Israel will know that I am the Lord their God, and the nations will know that the people of Israel went into exile for their sin because they were unfaithful to me. Nobody's going to say, well, then why were the Israelites so long away from the land, almost 2,000 years away from the land? Everybody will understand they were unfaithful to God, and God disciplined his people. That's why. So I hid my face from them and handed them over to their enemies, and they fell by the sword. I dealt with them according to their uncleanness and their offenses, and I hid my face from them. Throughout the scripture, I'll let my face shine upon them. When God faces you, when his face shines upon you, it's his favor, his kindness, and his goodness to you. When his face isn't looking to you, it's your discipline. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will now restore the fortunes of Jacob and will have compassion on all the people of Israel. I'll be zealous for my holy name. They will forget their shame and all the unfaithfulness they showed toward me when they lived in safety in their land with no one to make them afraid. Their shame is when Jesus Christ came and they rejected him. And they were disciplined. The Romans came and became the whip of God for them. All right, let's finish up this chapter real quick. With no one to make them afraid. When I have brought them back from the nations and have gathered them from the countries of their enemies, I will be proved holy through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God. For though I sent them into exile among the nations, I will gather them to their own land, not leaving any behind. This hasn't been fulfilled, not leaving any Israelite behind. Every one of them are coming back to the land of Israel. And you'll look in vain to find a Jew in New York City. I will no longer hide my face from them, for I will pour out my spirit on the people of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. All right, that is the end of a fantastic prophecy. It's an amazing statement. And you know what? God keeps his word. He writes this as if it's already happened. It's like historic narrative. It's future. But he says, it's happening. It's going to happen because I said